If you'd have told me a year ago that Shooter's first saddling was going to go like this, I'd have never believed you. Welcome back to Becky, Amio Horse Training, and this is Bonnys Six Shooter. If you guys have been following me for any period of time, Shooter has been in several videos up to this point. Most of those videos involve when groundwork doesn't really work out the way we intend it. And so today I'm going to be doing his first saddling, and since most of his sessions are a little bit tougher, I have to be pretty cautious with how I approach him. Today, he's being exceptionally good. He's in a good headspace. I'd already worked him with his surcingle and saddle pad on, and I know I'm titling this video a first saddling, and this is my Bonnys bareback saddle that I'm putting on him for the first time. It's kind of the step up in between the surcingle and the traditional Western saddle, and I'm choosing to take baby steps with this colt. I'd rather not traumatize him by trying to throw up a big saddle up there. There's a moment there when you're throwing a big saddle up on the horse's back where you kind of have a blind spot as you throw it up there. And I don't want this colt to get nervous by my insecurities when I'm throwing this piece of equipment up on his back. So, you know, being a woman, I'm not as strong as a man. I can't just manhandle most Western saddles the way a man can with one hand, but I can do that with my little bareback saddle here, and I can still, you know, navigate around the horse. It's not cumbersome to me, so that's the one convenience about using this little piece of equipment. And I can still cinch it up the exact same way I would a traditional Western saddle. It has latigos on both sides, and it has a cinch so I can get it as tight as I want, and they still feel the pressure on their back. They still feel the stirrups hit them as it lays over their side, and they get the feel of something bigger and bulkier on them. There's a few things that I want to draw your attention to as I move back and forth across this colt. Now, I've kind of got my lunge line just laying out there. I'm trying not to get it wrapped up around my arm or my body at all. If this colt decides to leave, I want him to just leave. I've done videos before for you guys where I saddle at the tie rail, and that was just a different minded horse. This one, I specifically knew that I was going to need to saddle him where he didn't feel any sort of restraints or constraints, and I just wanted to allow him the opportunity to leave. If he felt uncomfortable, I wanted him to just leave the situation. That's why I'm kind of leaving the lunge line kind of carefree and on the ground. And if he decides to go, he's going to go and he's not going to hurt me or hurt himself. That's why I'm working him this way. And we have to be able to adjust for each kind of horse that we're working on, okay? We kind of have to know the mindset of each individual animal that we're working with. Now, I'd already, you know, gone underneath his belly a lot, so he was real comfortable with me underneath him. I've trimmed his feet a bunch. Now I'm really excited this colt has cocked a hind foot. This is his way of accepting what's going on. And I'm putting a breast collar on him. He'd never experienced that before. So part of the whole saddling process is experiencing these constraints and feeling these parts and pieces of equipment all over his body that he normally has never felt before. Now, right here, I don't have his attention. He was paying attention to something that the dogs were doing, and they were playing around. And so I had to get his attention back on me, because this is a moment where sometimes if they're paying attention to something else and they're not thinking about what we've just put on their back, and then we bring their attention back to what's going on right in front of them, like, you know, having that saddle cinched up, we might have an accident. That's why, have you ever heard anybody say, don't ever let a colt fall asleep while you're sitting on it, and then they wake up and they have a come apart because they have fallen asleep while you're sitting on their back, and then when they wake up and come to, they forget that there's a person up there. It's happened. I've seen it happen. It's not just a fairy tale or an old wives' tale. I've had it happen to me, and so I wanted to make sure I had his attention back on what was going on right there with me, with him, instead of paying attention to the dogs there, okay? So I'm just trying to rub him all over, and I wanted to take a few steps there with him and get him to move, because those first few steps, when they experience the feel of that cinch tight on them and then the breast collar around their chest, that could be an opportunity for them to, you know, again, have a come apart. So I always want to take a few cautious steps. As I've shown you in previous videos with other horses, those first few steps can be pretty scary when they get this piece of equipment on them the first time. And I will guarantee you guys, I've started enough horses that, I don't know, a very, very high percentage of the time, how they react with a first-time piece of equipment, with the first-time, you know, buoy on them, with the first-time a dummy on their back, first time having a flank rope on them, all of those first times, how they react is going to be how they react the first time that we get in the tack, the first time that we ask them to trot, the first time that we ask them to lope off. And so we want to make darn sure that this horse has a really, really good first experience with everything that we do with it from here on out, because that's going to set the stage for all of his firsts from here on out. So I'm going to go ahead and push him around out here, really easy and gentle. I'm not looking to send him around really hard. I don't even care if he doesn't even lope. I'm just looking for really quality work where he's accepting the equipment. He's learning what it feels like to have those stirrups banging on his sides. If I can get him to go over the ground poles, even better. I've talked about this in other videos where making your groundwork count, making it all worth something. We're not just trying to build an athlete here and send him around as hard and fast as we can. We want him to have cognitive function. We want him to understand what's going on, make good choices, use his feet properly, change speeds appropriately, and not just zoom around as fast as he can go. Now, the pivot lost me briefly, so I went and cut that piece out, and I figured it'd be a good opportunity to bring him in to the center, realign my pivot, and then tighten up his cinch again, because again, when we first cinch the saddle up on them, we don't want to hog it in. We don't want to pull it in as tight as we possibly can. We want to ease it in. And so I was bringing him in to tighten it up the rest of the way, and now I'm going to send him back out again and let him experience that feeling. I'm not going to push him really hard here. You know, just a couple light swings with that lunge line, and that was enough to send him out, and I can cluck to him a little bit, change directions here, have him go over the ground poles going the other direction. You know, it doesn't take much to push this colt to go very fast, so I kind of have to stay backed off on him. Now again, Pivo lost me briefly, but that was really all I needed to get done today. Good experience. Another thing I want to draw your attention to is all the petting that I'm doing on him, all the rubbing on him, keeping my hands in contact with his body, constantly touching and petting and rubbing and reassuring him that it's okay. He's wanting to cock a leg here. He's really comfortable and accepting of this whole experience. I cannot tell you guys how excited I am about how this first saddling went. I wasn't really sure what to expect. I would attribute the improvement in his behavior to being castrated a year ago. That sure made a difference. And also, I've been super consistent in how I've handled him up until this point. I focused really hard on the foundation, sticking to routines. He's always been handled. He's been tied. He's had his feet trimmed. And I've done a lot of work with that saddle pad and surcingle here in the round pen and at the tie rail. I'm going to go ahead and unsaddle him right here in the round pen and make this a really good experience for him, because it's possible to traumatize a horse just as much unsaddling them as it is saddling them. And we want to make sure the entire thing has been a good experience all the way around. And he doesn't spook. It doesn't bother him one bit. It's just another day at the office for him, so I'm super excited for this. Next time, you guys, we're going to the traditional Western saddle. Thanks for watching, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.